Just relax, man. You know he's your brother. You gotta live with him. You can't fucking kill him. You just gotta deal with it, man. But I wanna fucking kill the motherfucker so bad. Yeah. Fucking 6'3", fucking 193 pounds, big boy. Ain't easy to fucking beat. Pissed me off though. Pain in my freaking ass. Deal with his bullshit every day, man. I try to bubble you as much as I can, Doom, but it's just been bad timing. Behind, dead. That was too easy to beat Edgar easy. The goddess mercy with the lovely lady lumps. Oh, my heels bring the boys to the yard, and my lovely lady lumps bring the boys to the yard. Yoop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doo. What are you doing? What are you doing, huh? Huh, kitty? What are you doing? What are you doing? Come on, talk to me. You can meow. Come on. You know that mouse you caught last night got away, buddy? I put it in that cardboard box and it chewed its way out. You don't have to go catch that fucker again. Would you get off of the controller? Thank you. Push, 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 push. I need heals. We got it. Don't peek the center too hard. They got to turn up. Alright, who's gonna get that turn? Thank you. Good job, Diva. Don't push too far up, guys, and be careful. Yeah, that May. I don't want to push her at all. Thank you for destroying the wall for me. I couldn't get back. Alright, I'm backing up. I went up a little too far. Somebody's on base. May. Oh! Let's go. Come here, Hog. I got something for you. Alright, watch out behind me. I'm about to get knocked. Good job, guys. May dead. Mercy knocked out mech. Or, you know what I mean, Diva. My bad. Woo! Quadruple. They all? Yeah, they are. Yeah. Yeah. Higher. She's just spamming them now. I can't keep up. It's too much. No! Alright, guys. Listen. We gotta push the base more. We got to separate it there. We really gotta focus on the objective, though. We were in two different groups, kind of. We need to all push together towards the objective, I think. You got another plan, let me know. We gotta get that turn. Let's go on base. Push the base. Get the base, get the base, get the base. Focus her. Good job. I got your bubble. I'm dead. Get the May. She's half. She's low. Good job. You guys got this. Oh boy. I need help with the orb. Never mind. Come on. I'm dead. Keep trying to contest if you can. There's a Lucio hiding on our spawn. I gotta get there. Watch out, Reaper. Get ready, guys. Group up hard and get ready. No! No, man. Like, I can't push 5 guys at once. Ah, damn it. That fucking May. I'm dead, boys. Stay on base, Hog. Don't get off and watch out for the turn behind you, Hog. It's in the same spot that it was. Try to get to the base and help if you can. You got to. You got no choice. Shit. I'm gonna get wiped right away. That's it, guys. Next round. That round we shouldn't have lost. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be toxic or anything. That May's right here on base. There's not many of you guys on base. Please be careful. Uh-oh. Good. Damn, that sucks, bro. You know, the only thing that's like stripes me about this game and upsets me is, well, two things, but one of them is, man, as long as the game's turn's gone. As long as this game's been out, like, I wish they would get some new levels. Like, they can adjust so much during the holidays and add, stuff to it. Why can't they, switch a couple of levels up? You know what I mean? But other than that, like, one other thing, I don't know, man. It just sucks getting, you'll have them with every game, but it sucks, like, they don't have, like, specifically skill-based matchmaking in, like, QP. Like, their matchmaking would be better. I was fuck up. This game. Anybody else gonna shoot the fucking wall? Never mind. Fuck it. Later. That dude was fucking stupid. I just want to verify. do have to fix the sound. Just put it on default. See if that fixes it.
At T-Mobile, we believe you should get more. That's why we merged with Sprint. Now, it's about to get even better.
This is the BenQ Zowie XL2546K, and it's the best 240Hz gaming monitor that you can finally buy for competitive gaming. I say finally because the XL2546S was discontinued about 2 months after it released back in April or May, and we've had to wait for this. I'm still unsure why they did that, but because we have a replacement, I don't care anymore. Now, before we move on, a couple things. Number one, Zowie did send this monitor to review, but as always, nothing they say or do will influence the review. And number two, I want to give you a quick, probably useless backstory about myself and why I think I'm able to make the claim that this is the best 240Hz gaming monitor, because I'm not the type of person to just give any monitor that type of praise. If you don't care about the backstory, just skip to this time somewhere in the screen or use the chapter below. Okay, back in 2016 to 2018, I was an aspiring CSGO esports professional. I started off as a Gold Nova 2, and after a year of learning and grinding, I got to Global Elite. By the time I got to Global, I've gained so much more experience than other people, mainly because of my ability to adapt so quickly, that I found other enemy Global players too easy and predictable, so then I moved on to the Esports Entertainment Association League, or ESEA. I landed on rank C for my first rank, then after some time, I went to the open tournaments, to intermediate, to main, I got to A+ rank, and started making my way to rank G so I could move on to rank S. While I was on my way to rank G, I got super burnt out and suddenly quit the game and never touched it since, mainly because it felt like another job, and I just didn't need that in my life. So I moved on to other games to relearn just how to have fun. With all that said, during that time I figured out that there's a lot more to a gaming monitor than just a 1 millisecond or 0.5 millisecond response time, which, let's face it, a lot of manufacturers lie about that anyway. I mean, I still will show you ghosting performance though. But if you're an aspiring esports professional for FPS games in particular, then hopefully this video will help you understand what you want to look for in a great esports monitor. Because they're not all the same, and this is solely a monitor meant to help you stay competitive in the highest level of competitive gaming. Color accuracy sucks, viewing angles suck, it's $500 for a 1080p TN panel with a mediocre at best media consumption experience. But again, if that's what you're after, then this is not for you. Zowie doesn't pretend it's good at media consumption, and it shows with this monitor's marketing. This monitor exists to help you up, and let me tell you, if you're coming from a 144Hz or especially a 60Hz display, does it help? To understand how this monitor helps, we'll need to start with the pixel response time, because if everything is blurry, your eyes are going to have a hard time processing fast motion situations, such as flicking. The XL2546K has 3 levels of overdrive, or advanced motion acceleration, or AMA for short, as Zowie calls it. Off, high, and premium. It also has ELMB, which they call Diac Plus, and has the same levels as AMA, off, high, and premium. The XL2546K overall produces average results for 240Hz when not using any kind of backlight strobing such as Diac Plus. There is quite a bit of overshoot when using either the high or premium AMA setting, so I would recommend keeping it off or at the high setting at the most, since it reduces ghosts but adds a noticeable amount of overshoot. Now, for some reason, the previous S model looked to have better grays than the new K model. Not sure why that is, and I can't compare the light grays and dark grays because my dumbass accidentally used the white, gray, and black setting to capture results instead of the middle gray settings. Back to the K model, enabling Diac Plus gives us fantastic clarity, producing an image that's pretty much as clear as the reference image with a few ghosty friends behind it. Now you may be saying, okay, this looks good and all, but how do I know that this is better than other monitors? Well, by showing you comparisons, of course. Let's look at what I think is the best 240Hz IPS gaming monitor the MSI MAG251RX, and the XL2546K's closest competitor, the Gigabyte RS KD25F. Here's the MSI, which not only has better overdrive results than a Zowie, by having less trails and not producing any overshoot, but also seems to perform about the same when it comes to ELMB. Then with the RS, it performs pretty much the same as the MSI, albeit with some slight overshoot at the highest overdrive setting. Okay, so then what makes the Zowie the best? Because it looks like the MSI and the RS do better overall. Well, remember how the ELMB looks the same for all of these? They only do on YouTube because I have to properly expose my camera to show you these results. What you guys aren't seeing is the sacrifice in peak brightness with both the MSI and the RS going from at least 400 nits with ELMB off down to 170 nits for both monitors with ELMB off. That's peak, which means the typical brightness is anywhere from 60 nits to 120 nits, which 120 nits is fine and is actually recommended for regular use with your room lights on. However, it's not ideal for competitive gaming. You'll want a higher screen brightness to be able to spot absolutely everything in all situations, which is what the Zowie provides, going from 361 nits with Diac Plus off down to 345 nits with Diac Plus on. That's double the peak brightness of the RS and the MSI, and makes everything a lot easier to see because of that. Now that doesn't mean that all of you will enjoy Diac Plus or even the RS or the MSI, because the main drawback for some users is that the technique that's used for pretty much all ELMBs, or extreme low motion blur, is the backlight strobing technique, which some users do get a headache from. And if you know you're one of those people, then that sucks, because Diac Plus and ELMB in general is awesome. Now if we go down to 144Hz, things still look amazing because of Diac Plus, which again can be said about the RS and the MSI, except they still are stuck at that peak brightness of 170 nits. And if you want to compare 144Hz between these three monitors, go ahead and pause, because now it's time for 60Hz. This is where the Zowie shines, because any Zowie product with Diac or Diac Plus has the ability to use backlight strobing at 60Hz, giving clear results with, again, some ghosty friends. This is not possible with any other monitor I've used so far, and I'm not sure why. So this is a clear win for the Zowie. Next is the black equalizer and color vibrance. Now why should you care about having those two features? Okay, say you're playing a game like Rainbow Six Siege. That game has a lot of dark areas and has a grayscale-ish color theme to it. Do you think it would be easier seeing dark enemies hiding in dark areas or shadows with no black equalizer? Or do you think it would be easier to spot them if you were able to get rid of those dark areas, making it easier for you to distinguish them from their background or hiding spot so you can react quicker? I mean, it's a trap question, but you know the answer. That's the whole point of a black equalizer. Crank the gamma of black and gray shades of colors so you can spot enemies easier. Not only that, but depending on the game, you'll also want a color vibrance feature to crank the saturation of these grayscale-ish color-themed games to be able to distinguish your enemies from their background that are similarly colored to their skin, armor, etc. But not all black equalizers perform the same, just like not all monitors can use ELMB without sacrificing a crap ton of brightness. Let me show you what I mean. The XL2546K's black equalizer ranges from 0 to 20 with the ability to adjust it in increments of 1, and the color vibrance ranges from 0 to 20, with 10 being the default and with the ability to adjust it in increments of 1. This is Siege with no black equalizer and the default color vibrance. Then this is with the black equalizer set to 1, 5, 10, and 20. Here's 0 again, and 20. Big difference, right? And again, not only is it beneficial to brighten up the scene, but also to add saturation, making Womai much more easily distinguishable, especially if he was trying to blend in with the wall rather than where he's currently at. To give you an idea of how it stacks up to the RS and the MSI, here's the RS with its black equalizer off, then set to 11, then, whoa, what the f is that? Yes, my aspiring esports professional friends, you're looking at actual results of the RS's black equalizer. It's so bad it makes Nvidia's RTX 3000 series availability look good. For the RS, it's best to drop the black equalizer to 11, which does some equalizing, but not much. At least it makes up for it by including a color vibrance feature, which the MSI doesn't have. Speaking of, here's the MSI with its black equalizer off, then set to the highest setting. It does pretty good, but like I said, it doesn't include a color vibrance feature. Now sure, you can use Nvidia's color saturation feature, but that requires more work than setting it to a profile on your OSD like you can with the Zowie and the RS. But we'll get to the OSD later. For now, let's focus on the game that's harder on black equalizers, Escape from Tarkov. Here's a Zowie with it off, then set to 1, 5, 10, and 20. And here's color vibrance. Overall, it does pretty well and makes life a lot easier because you can see everything, all while not overexposing the bright areas such as the lights. Next is the MSI, which also does very well. In fact, even though it performs similar to the Zowie, it seems to do a cleaner job mainly because the black uniformity on my Zowie is absolutely horrendous. And lastly, there's the RS, which, oops, wrong picture. Meant to show you this one. And then there's the RS, which was pretty meh, since it can't crank as high as the other monitors without screwing everything up. But again, at least you have color vibrance. So with all that said, hopefully you understand why pros not only use Zowie monitors at home, but also during tournament events, which might or might not have something to do with sponsorship deals or something, but I don't know. What I do know is that input lag is very good. As always, I don't have any actual data since I don't currently have a way to test it, so you can take this with as many grains of salt as you want to. But as someone whose eyes can process information extremely quick, I found input lag to feel identical to other 240Hz monitors when set to 240Hz. Sadly though, I can't praise color accuracy and gamut coverage the same way. I mean, I did tell you in the beginning that it sucked and that's not the point of this monitor, but I still have to talk about it. Starting with the color accuracy, it's pretty bad out of the box, producing an
That's the sound of thousands of people all working at Ford. We're proud to employ more hourly workers than any other automaker in this country. We're proud to be built for America.
Based on Center for Automotive Research data.
an average delta E of 5.40, which is pretty bad for a TN panel. Did it bother me though? At first it did a lot. Because I'm a reviewer who uses a bunch of different amazing panels, going from MSI's PS321QR Creator Monitor, which by the way, subscribe if you don't want to miss that review, to this, I cried because I prefer single monitor setups and had to downgrade to the Zowie TN panel. But after a day of use, I got used to it and didn't find it to be that big of an issue. And I think that's how most people are too. You just get used to things. What I didn't get used to though is that even after being calibrated, it still produced pretty bad results, giving an average delta E of 3.54, having an extremely tough time with all shades of red. I've never had a monitor do so poorly after calibration. This was a non-issue with my XL2546S, which gave a calibrated average of 1.64, which is pretty good. Though, being that it also had a TN panel, I'd take an IPS panel with a delta E of 5 over any TN gaming panel with a delta E of less than 1 any day of the week for anything that isn't competitive gaming. Back to the numbers, when uncalibrated, the XL2546K had a peak brightness of 361 nits with a contrast ratio of 1017:1. When calibrated, the brightness drops down ever so slightly to 347 nits, and the contrast ratio stays relatively the same at 998:1, so it's pretty good. Which I can't say the same for when it comes to viewing angles. Because the XL2546K has a TN panel, it does pretty poorly when looking from the bottom, less than average from the side, and has a high contrast effect when looking from the top. So if you have friends that are watching things with you, make sure they're standing somewhere right beside you. Next is the OSD. The OSD on the K model is one of the few things that I wished Zowie didn't change, mainly because the last one was already really good, and because I was used to it for 3.5 years, probably plays a bias. You have 2 buttons which by default change your mode and input source, and a single nipple to navigate through the entire OSD. You still get an S-switch remote, which allows you to save up to 3 profiles on the bottom buttons, a scroll wheel, and a back button. But they took out the red text and made the buttons more satisfying to press, giving a more solid tactile feel and sound. Pushing the back or scroll wheel button accesses the quick menu, which have 4 different quick options for you to choose from. Clicking on the menu accesses the full OSD, which puts you in the mode selector so you can select what mode you're on. You have color to adjust your black equalizer, color vibrance, low blue light, gamma, color temp, and color weakness, which is for the colorblind. Going to picture accesses your diag plus, brightness, contrast, sharpness, and AMA. Save lets you save your profile to one of the gamer profiles, at least that's what I thought, because if you save it, it doesn't save. When you go to the S-switch to select the profile you just saved, it goes back to some kind of factory default setting. To save it, you have to change whatever settings you want to change, then hold one of the 3 profile buttons until you hear a beep. Then you have custom, which lets you change what you see in the quick menu, as well as the quick buttons on the back of the monitor. And lastly, you have system settings, which lets you turn on and off your FreeSync Premium. Overall, it's pretty intuitive and easy to use, but it doesn't include any software OSD like most other manufacturers do. While it is nice that the S-Switch makes it super easy to control your profiles, I personally would prefer having a software OSD with an application tied to a profile, which automatically activates when I open that application, all while doing nothing. But that's just me because I'm lazy and I love convenience. Next is the design. This is another one of those things that I wish they didn't change, at least mostly, because personally, I like the old one better. The new design doesn't look bad, it looks fine. It's all plastic with some red trim here and there, but it's a modernized single smooth piece rather than the industrial looking design they had before, which I personally preferred. Another thing I don't like is the base, where it's smaller, which is good since it takes up an extremely small footprint, but they took out the dedicated spot for the S-Switch remote, so now it just goes anywhere. It looks like it's wandering around with nowhere to call home. That doesn't mean that the new base is all bad though, because as I mentioned, it's smaller, which means it takes up less desk space. Just like Zowie shows on their website where it's easier to have a setup like this isn't just marketing. This is real stuff for pros and high-level players. Back in my CSGO days, and even now for Valorant, I actually have my setup that way just because I perform better. And having as much space as possible is a necessity, so you can have a setup that's as comfortable as you need it to be. More things I don't personally like with this new design is the placement of the headphone holder. It's this piece which can be pulled out, but it's plastic and feels flimsy compared to the previous red painted metal bar that popped out on the left side of the monitor. The rest of the monitor is fine though. The stand still has markers, which is useful if you travel a lot and you like your monitor set up in a specific way. It has tilt, height, swivel, and pivot adjustments, twisting and turning a little bit more than the previous design. And the Zowie shield can now be uninstalled and installed toolless, whereas the previous one required screwdrivers. For I/O, or input-output, it includes 3 HDMI 2.0 ports, 1 DisplayPort 1.2 port, a headphone jack, and a Kensington lock, so it loses out on the USB hub. It includes 100 by 100 VESA mounting support, so you can mount this to a monitor arm or stand. It includes a wire routing hole, so wiring looks less messy. It still has a carrying handle for easy traveling, but it's overall thinner, so it's not as comfortable to hold as a previous thicker one, since this new one really digs into your fingers. And lastly, it includes a cover so non-Zowie peasants can't even see a glimpse of what is the king of 240Hz gaming monitors until it's too late as you rip their heads off their shoulders. It's also useful to protect it against rain. So now that you know everything, is the XL2546K worth $500? Well, you should already know the answer to this because of what I said in the beginning of the video and throughout the video. Diac performs godly because it doesn't sacrifice some brightness and goes as low as 60 Hz. The black equalizer as well as the color vibrance performs super well. Input lag is as good as any other 240Hz monitor I've ever used. And the design is specifically geared towards esports players. However, I know some people would look at this as some unorthodox feature and won't understand why this matters. Color reproduction, color accuracy, and viewing angles suck, but again, that is not what you buy this for. And if you can't wrap your head around the idea of spending $500 for a monitor that has the best gaming performance but sucks at media consumption, then this might not be for you. But to answer the question, is it worth it? Well, if you're an aspiring esports professional or play at the highest level of competitive gaming, and you want to have as much of an advantage as possible, then yes, it's 100% worth it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I will be getting my hands on a 360Hz monitor, specifically the Asus, when Best Buy has it in stock, but as for now, this is where my heart belongs. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed it, leave a like. If you disliked it, leave a dislike. If you want to find out where I featured... If you want to check out any of the stuff I featured in this video, visit the links in the video description. Don't forget to follow me on my socials, which are also somewhere in the description, maybe a pinned comment. And as always, have a great day, every day. Peace. I'll be honest, the BenQ Mobius EX2510 was not on my list of monitors to review, mainly because I don't care about 144Hz monitors. But since BenQ reached out and said, hey, want one to review? How could I say no? And I'm glad they asked, because this is in all respects a great monitor. Not only is it my favorite 1080p 144Hz gaming monitor, which just so happens to have the added benefit of having an IPS panel, but I'd go as far as to say that this is the best 1080p 144Hz gaming monitor. How and why, you may ask? Well, not only does it perform super well in gaming performance, but it's got so many features that I must admit I thought I wouldn't care about, but after using them, found that they made day-to-day use noticeably better. A quality of life thing, if you will. Before we begin, two things. One, this is the 25-inch model and costs $250. There is a 27-inch model called the EX2710 if you are interested in that, which costs $300. I personally went with the 25-inch model simply because of pixel density. And two, I want to thank BenQ for sending me this monitor to review. As always, any company that decides to send me a product will go through the same scrutiny as if I purchased this with my own money, as I work for myself, not for them. They have no say or intervention on how I would want to present a product, nor do they get an early preview. They're watching this at the same time as you guys. With that out of the way, let's begin with the things that matter most in a gaming monitor. It's gaming performance. This thing actually surprised me. Starting with the pixel response time, BenQ advertises this monitor to have a 1 millisecond response time, but as regular viewers already know, I don't care about advertised numbers, I care about results. So does it actually deliver? The EX2510 has 4 levels of overdrive, or as BenQ calls it, Advanced Motion Acceleration, or AMA for short. 0, 1, 2, and 3. It also includes ELMB, which is called blur reduction, but we'll get to that. Starting with the AMA set to 0, things look about average for 144Hz. And since I've only reviewed one other 144Hz monitor, the AOC C24G1, I'm not even going to bother comparing the EX2510 to the AOC for 2 reasons. 1, this obliterates that, and 2, this performs so well it hangs in there with the 240Hz big boys. To show you what I mean, let me show you a comparison between the EX2510 and the best 240Hz gaming monitor, the BenQ Zowie XL2546, when it's set to 144Hz. By the way, I'm waiting for my XL2546K to come in, so subscribe if you don't want to miss that review. Anyway, this is the Mobius EX2510, and this is the BenQ Zowie XL2546S. Not bad. And keep in mind, the Mobius has an IPS panel, whereas the Zowie has a TN panel, so the Mobius is doing extremely well. But wait, there's more, because if we set the AMA to 1, 2, and then 3, things get noticeably cleaner, producing less ghosts than with the AMA set to 0, while not introducing any overshoot. The same can't be said when it comes to the Zowie, where it introduces a bit more than desired overshoot. Okay, the Mobius is doing very well so far, especially for an IPS panel, but what about ELMB? The Zowie has Diac Plus, where it not only produces super crisp results, as if a photo were taken rather than me recording on a slider, but does so without sacrificing any brightness. Does the Mobius carry the same tech as a Zowie? Well, yes, but also no. First off, let's all praise the glorious results that the Mobius gives us with the blur reduction turned... Wait, what? That's not a UFO, that's a like button! Basically, that's me hinting to you that you should hit the like button. I mean, come on, it's free. Anyway, enabling the blur reduction gives us fantastic clarity. Even better is that no matter which AMA you set it to, it'll stay this way, unlike the Zowie, which will give you some overshoot with the higher AMA settings. The best thing about the blur reduction tech in the Mobius is that it takes a page from Zowie's book by maintaining a very high peak brightness of 260 nits. It's not quite the 330 nits like the Zowie, but 260 nits is still plenty bright for pretty much everything. This is something every monitor I've tested that isn't a certain BenQ product fails to do so far, which is why I praise Zowie monitors in particular when it comes to the pixel response time. Every other monitor I've tested so far always cuts the peak brightness by at least half when enabling their respective ELMB. Now, it's not all perfect because unlike the Zowie, the Mobius isn't able to use a blur reduction at 60Hz like you can with Diac Plus. But I won't be taking points away for it because Zowie is the only monitor I've seen so far that can use ELMB at 60Hz. Anyway, the best overdrive setting is the blur reduction, which produces fantastic results. I would also recommend using it pretty much all the time since there are basically no negatives other than some people that are sensitive to backlight strobing, which can give users a headache. If you know you're one of those people, I would recommend using the highest AMA setting since it produces the best results without any overshoot. If you're playing at 60Hz or continuously fluctuate between 144Hz and down to 60, I would recommend using the 1 AMA setting since going to 2 or 3 introduces overshoot at 60 Hz. Okay, next is the black equalizer, which the EX2510 has 2 different types of? Let me explain. You have your traditional black equalizer that I always talk about, which adjusts the gamma of black and gray shades of colors so you can easily see enemies hiding in dark areas, such as shadows. Real quick, I've already said this in the Zowie video, but if you're one of those people that are going to cry in the comments because a black equalizer is cheating, or that's not how the developer intended the game to be played, then either skip this part, close the video, or keep crying because, like it or not, people that want an advantage, such as me, will use this feature. Anyway, the Mobius also includes a different type of black equalizer called Light Tuner, which BenQ says is kind of like a black equalizer, but not totally, with the difference being that it's supposed to uncover hidden details that would otherwise be hidden if the scene was darker. Now I'll be honest, I tested both of these to see if I noticed any difference between the 2 technologies, and there really wasn't one, so I'll just show you my standard testing. Starting with Escape from Tarkov with the black equalizer off, things actually don't look too dark. I've seen darker, but I would prefer to have a brighter scene to be able to see enemies easier. Moving to 1, things are brighter, 5 increases the image slightly, and 10 makes everything pretty much visible. And when it comes to the light tuner, it makes everything ever so slightly brighter. The same happens when you have the light tuner set to 1 and 5 and compare it to the black equalizer set to 1 and 5. The light tuner is ever so slightly more visible, but you probably won't notice this difference in game. The monitor also includes a color vibrance feature, so you can add more color to games with grayscale-ish color themes, such as Escape from Tarkov, which works regardless if you use the black equalizer or the light tuner. Next we have Rainbow Six Siege. Here's the black equalizer set to 0, 1, 5, and then 10. And here's with color tuner set to 10, which looks slightly more washed out than a black equalizer. But that won't matter because, again, there's a color vibrance feature which allows you to add more colors when needed to distinguish your enemy from their background so you can react quicker without second guessing yourself, wondering if what you're looking at is an enemy or some part of the map. So overall, the black equalizer and light tuner works extremely well and you won't have any complaints. Next is input lag. As always, I don't have any actual data on input lag since I don't have a way to test it, so you can take this with as much grains of salt as you'd want, but based on what I see and feel as a high skilled level player, responsiveness is extremely good. It's up there with some of the best 144Hz monitors and actually feels as good as some 240Hz displays, just like this water bottle feels super good coming from this water bottle from lttstore.com. Okay, now you know its gaming performance is good. So what was I talking about earlier when I said there are some features this monitor has that I thought I wouldn't use, but I ended up liking? Well, there are 3 things that BenQ is trying to distinguish this monitor from every other monitor in this category, which are the speakers, eye care, and HDRI, or HDR Intelligent.
Ford, the one that assembles more vehicles in the U.S. than any other manufacturer. Built for America. Built Ford proud.
Based on IHS Markit CYE 2019 U.S. light vehicle production data.
Also, part of the agreement was that they wanted me to talk about it, so I really have no choice. Let's start with the speakers. I don't usually talk about speakers on monitor reviews, mainly because monitors that include speakers either don't exist, or if they do, almost always suck. That's not the case here. The EX2510 comes with 2 2.5 watt Trevolo speakers, which the reviewer's guide says is for audio immersion, which is an absolute lie. With a combined output of 5 watts, it's not immersive, far from that. But that's not to say they're bad, because they're actually very good for monitor speakers. Before this monitor came in, I always had to wear headsets to hear basically anything. Now that's not necessarily a problem, because I love the sounds coming from my Beyerdynamics MX300 Gen 2s, which I will review sometime in the future. But being that I'm a reviewer and I'm forced to use everything on a product to give you that information, turns out, for anything that doesn't require enthusiast level sound quality, amazing soundstage, and so on, which is basically almost anything I do that isn't watching a movie or playing games, I actually found myself preferring the built-in speakers on the EX2510s rather than having to put my headset on and take them off every time I need to leave my desk, which is pretty often. Also, I'm able to watch videos with my girlfriend without having to leave my headset on my desk, cranked, hoping we can both hear what we're watching. Basically, it's the convenience factor that sold me because I love convenience. Also, they get pretty loud and at max volume, still have good clarity without introducing any distortion or rattling. I'd say they're almost as good as my 16-inch MacBook Pro speakers, with the exception of not being as clear and not quite as loud, but not far off. And I do enjoy the speakers on my 16-inch MacBook Pro. One last thing about the speakers before we move on to the other stuff. The bass is simulated, so it's not true bass. There is no subwoofer to give you that true bassy feel, but the simulation is fine and doesn't sound displeasing. If I wanted a fantastic experience, then I'll just use my headset or my sound system on my TV. Next is eye care. There are three main features of eye care: BI Plus, or Brightness Intelligence Plus, low blue light, and color weakness. The low blue light is pretty obvious. It lowers the amount of blue light. And color weakness is great for the colorblind, as you have a red and green filter, which lets you adjust whatever you need so you can distinguish colors easier. Then we have Brightness Intelligence Plus, which I personally appreciate. What BI Plus does is it measures the ambient lighting in your room with the ambient light sensor, measures the current screen brightness, and automatically increases and decreases the screen brightness when needed, as well as adjusting the color temperature. I think it's pretty useful because I like to keep my window shades open, and that lets in a lot of sunlight, which in turn means I need a higher screen brightness to compete with the sun. Then as it gets darker, the monitor automatically lowers the screen brightness without me having to do any of that, which in turn helps prevent eye strain and headaches. All of this is adjustable as well, including three functions. You have on and off, which just turns the function on and off. Light meter, which lets you turn on and off this little eye that tells you how bright or dark your monitor is adjusting to. And sensor sensitivity, which tells the sensor how sensitive you want it to respond to the ambient lighting. The only thing I disliked about enabling BI Plus is that you can't adjust most of the monitor settings. You have to first turn BI Plus off, then go on about your business. Lastly, for the things that I thought I wouldn't care for, which I actually still don't, is the HDR-I or HDR Intelligence. They like putting intelligence in a lot of their naming, don't they? You have an HDR-I button on the bottom right of the monitor, which cycles through 4 different settings: Game HDR-I, Cinema HDR-I, HDR, and Off. We'll start with BenQ's marketing claims. BenQ says that it uses the ambient light sensor on the bottom of the monitor, as well as some algorithm magic to constantly adjust the HDR effect based on the lighting in your area. In turn, this should lead to a better viewing experience when you're on 2 of the HDR intelligent modes. They also claim that the HDR intelligent modes have the smarts to add HDR to non-HDR content without exaggerating brightness or dark areas. This all sounds like marketing fluff, so how does it actually perform? Let's start with HDR, then we'll move to the emulated HDR. HDR, with or without intelligence modes, performs okay. It's not going to win any awards except for being the only monitor I've tested so far to actually not overexpose bright areas to the point where the image looks like you cranked the contrast to 100. There are actually some benefits to be gained here, whether you're on Game HDR-I, Cinema HDR-I, or just standard HDR. The Game and Cinema intelligent modes did do what it said by adjusting the levels of brightness to try and give me a better HDR effect, but the overall experience wasn't that great since I kept seeing the entire screen's brightness increase and decrease, particularly when the sun outside just temporarily covered a cloud, so I ended up preferring the standard HDR and SDR instead. The same applies when I use the emulated HDR modes. The Game and Cinema intelligent modes were not as visually pleasing as SDR or the standard HDR mode, so I would personally keep it on SDR or standard HDR when using this monitor's HDR. But as I mentioned earlier, the Mobius did much better than any other VESA HDR 400 certified gaming monitor I've used so far, mainly because they overexpose everything, making the image look like a hot mess, which wasn't the case here on the standard HDR mode. So in short, I wouldn't go out of my way to use the HDR, but it does actually add some visual benefits, but don't expect much. It's not like it's mind-blowing or anything like that. The monitor's $250. Next is gamut coverage and color accuracy, which fares way better. BenQ advertises this monitor to have 99% coverage of the sRGB color space, but my color emitter determined that was a lie, covering only 95%. Though I doubt you'll be complaining with 95%. It also covers 69%, nice, of the Adobe RGB color space, which isn't nice if you're a photo editor, and covers 78% of the DCI-P3 color space, making it good enough for amateur video editors. When uncalibrated, the EX2510 produces average results, giving an average delta E of 3.59. So colors are not 100% accurate, but for an IPS panel, this is totally fine and you won't be looking at this monitor thinking that colors are too off. It also gave a good peak brightness of 350 nits with a contrast ratio of 1143 to 1, which beats the advertised 1001, which is nice since I'm used to seeing lower than advertised results with plenty of other monitors. When calibrated, the EX2510 gives impeccable results, producing an average delta E of 0.44, which to the human eye is perfect, as is anything with a delta E of below 1. It also gave a slightly higher brightness of 358 nits and a higher contrast ratio of 1181 to 1. If you want to know how to calibrate your monitor, I made a guide not too long ago which you can check out by clicking on the pop-out banner over here and with a link in the video description. And also, if you want to download my ICC color profile to try for yourself, I'll leave a link to my website in the video description as well. Don't get too excited about that though, because I've been too lazy to upload information on the last 3 monitors, so this might be a 4th, but I will get to it eventually. Another thing that is pretty good about this monitor, as with pretty much most IPS monitors, is the viewing angles. It does very well from all angles, adding no angle discoloration and maintaining a good image. Next is the on-screen display. This is probably the weakest part of the monitor. You have one button which only cycles through the available video sources, as well as a single nipple to navigate through the full OSD. You can access the quick settings by pushing the nipple left or right, and volume by pushing it up or down. One thing I don't like is that when you push the nipple in, it accesses the quick menu instead of accessing the full OSD, and as far as I can tell, there was no way to change that. I don't need a third way to access the quick menu. Once you're in the full OSD, you can change your input source, quick menu, which is quite confusing actually. Let's talk about that for a minute. In the quick menu, you have your color mode, which is fine, whatever, but if you look at the orange text, it says DisplayPort Standard. Then if you go to the quick menu on the full OSD, you can choose either Standard, Game, and Cinema and select whatever shortcut function you want. Okay, so you may be wondering, what's the big deal then? Well, the big deal is that from that menu, you can't choose if you want to be on Game, Standard, or Cinema. To do that, you have to go to the input source selection, go to whatever source you're on, and then change it from there. Since I only use one display at a time and don't have multiple devices connected to one monitor, I don't see how this is useful. This might be useful if you have a console or multiple PCs connected to one monitor, but I doubt it. All it did was confuse me on what settings I was selecting. What is nice though is that the quick menu settings let you change the shortcuts to whatever you want as long as the color profile supports it. And while we're talking about color profiles, if you open the quick menu, you can quickly change your color mode by pushing the nipple left or right. On the full OSD menu of the color mode, you can adjust the black equalizer, light tuner, color vibrance, brightness, contrast, gamma, color temps, AMA or overdrive, blur reduction or ELMB, and reset all your settings. Next is the eye care stuff like I mentioned earlier, audio, and system, which has your typical standard OSD system settings. Now, apart from the initially confusing input source modes, the rest of the OSD is fine. So then why did I say that it's the weakest part of the monitor? Well, that's because that's about the only thing, apart from the HDRI, that didn't perform exceptionally well like the rest of the monitor's features. It doesn't have any software OSD to easily control everything via software, like most other companies offer, and it doesn't offer anything similar to Zowie's S-Switch remote. If they added software support in the future, if that's possible, that would make this OSD a lot better, especially if you can tie an app to one of the profiles of the monitor so you don't have to keep fiddling with the nipple. Though, now that I say that out loud, it doesn't sound too bad to fiddle with nipple. Lastly, we have the design and smaller details. The EX2510 is quite nice. It's quite contemporary looking with some gamer touches here and there. The base is made of metal and is covered with a silver plastic and some oddly placed orange rubber trim. I'm personally not a fan of the orange, maybe red would have been better, but it is removable with a bit of manual labor in case you don't like it. Just remove all the screws, including the black plastic trim and the screws hiding under the rubber grips, remove the metal base, take the trim out, and voila! Just make sure if you do remove the orange trim, do not use a powered screwdriver to screw the screws back into their thread, otherwise you're going to strip the thread like I did with 3 of my screws. Going back to the monitor, the stand and the monitor is made of high quality plastic. For I/O, or input-output, it includes a headphone jack, 2 HDMI 2.0 ports, 1 DisplayPort 1.2 port, and a Kensington lock. There is no USB Type-A hub, so the I/O is pretty lackluster. But it includes all the necessities at least. It also includes an I/O cover.
Sure,
and the
business
stand has a
hours
wire
for
rabbit
Giant
hole, so
Pharmacy
wires
near
are less
Baltimore.
messy. The legs spread out, which I typically don't like, but that's mainly because they usually take up a lot of desk space. In this case, the overall footprint is quite small at about 8¼ inches from the back to the front of the base and 13 inches wide. Super small footprint, and I like it that way. The front of the monitor is quite nice, including your standard thin bezels with a thick chin including BenQ's branding. It also includes the ambient light sensor. It has tilt, height, and swivel adjustments, but no pivot, which if you use a monitor arm or stand won't be an issue since it has 100 by 100 VESA mounting support. Now that you know everything you need to know, is this monitor worth $250? Well, if you want the short answer, I give it a resounding yes. Apart from the lackluster HDR and OSD not having an easy way to switch between profiles, you can just use the standard profile for your default and use the profiles right beside the standard one for games, and it won't be too annoying. Apart from that, the overdrive and especially that ELMB performs so well. Better than even some 240Hz monitors set to 144Hz. I just don't want to bore you with 10 different monitors. The black equalizer and color tuner perform super well as well, doing as good as the XL2546S. The input lag felt super low, which is obviously great for gaming. The speakers and the automatic light adjustment made casual/general PC use a whole lot better, since I didn't need to constantly put my headset on and take it off, and not adjust my brightness when it gets dark, though not everyone will care about that as much as me. And the overall media consumption experience is good as well. It's not as good as, say, a nano IPS panel, but being that it's an IPS panel and performs just as well as a TN panel, not only can you have your cake, but you can eat it too. Now sure, there are other 144Hz monitors that are cheaper, but that's not a challenge. What I challenge you to do is find one that not only offers all these features, but have those features perform as well as the EX2510, all for the same price or cheaper. If you can, point me to it and maybe I'll do a review of that as well, but I think you're gonna have a hard time. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video, or just skipping to the conclusion, that's fine. If you guys enjoyed the video, leave a like. If not, leave a dislike. If you'd like to find out any of the stuff that I featured in this video, where to buy it, check out the links in the video description. As an Amazon associate, I earn from qualifying purchases. If you want to follow me on my socials, check the pinned comments as well as in the description. And other than that, have a great day, every day. Peace.
Papillon from Juice Monster. Peach and nectarine notes that dance on the tongue like butterflies, but that intense flavor? Unmistakably Monster. Pick up a can of Juice Monster Papillon today.
This is the Alienware AW2521H, and it's Dell's answer to the 360Hz base for $900. I also have the 1440p 240Hz version as well, so get subscribed if you don't want to miss that. Now, before I talk about this monitor, couple things. Number one, I'll be making comparison videos between this, the Asus PG259QN, if I can ever find one since they're all being scalped, Alienware's 1440p 240Hz model, and the BenQ Zowie XL2546K, which I've recently crowned as the best 240Hz gaming monitor for esports, which in turn makes it the best for competitive gaming as well. By the way, I'll be making a lot of comparisons between this and the BenQ Zowie XL2546K, simply because they're both targeted towards the esports scene. Lastly, a huge thanks to Dell, who asked me which of the monitors they offered I wanted to review, which obviously I said all of them, but we're starting with this and the 1440p model, and we'll move on to others later. You heard that right, there are more monitors. I'm pretty sure you know which one the third one is though. And for some reason, even though this will be released sometime later this month, at least as of recording this, apparently there's no embargo, so enough lollygagging, let's begin talking about this beast. Starting with the basics, the AW2521H has a 24.5-inch 1080p 360Hz fast IPS panel and includes NVIDIA's G-Sync and Reflex Latency Analyzer. Now we will talk about the Reflex Latency Analyzer and all the cool stuff in a bit, but first, let's talk about the main attraction, 360Hz. I'm not going to keep talking about my past competitive experiences in every video, but if you're a regular viewer, you already know what skill level I play at. For the new people, to keep it short, basically I'm really good. With that said, can I notice the difference going from 240Hz to 360Hz? Well, yes, but also no. I immediately notice the higher refreshes when I flick, not just when I'm wandering around. However, when I'm zoned into the game, it's not a difference I notice the same way I noticed going from 60Hz to 144Hz 5 years ago, then 144Hz to 240Hz almost 4 years ago. Now, does that mean that 360Hz is useless? Of course not. But at the same time, this is not the monitor for your average Joe. Back when 360Hz was unveiled, Nvidia stated that professional esports players' flick shot accuracy improved by 4% when compared to 240Hz. This makes sense because there are more refreshes your eye can process per second. That doesn't mean that you should just go right ahead and buy it though, unlike this water bottle from lttstore.com. Because as I mentioned, this is for high skill level players. I'm not talking about CSGO Global Elites, I'm talking about ESEAA+, G or S rank players trying to go pro, any current pro, or any aspiring esports professional that's certain that this will be beneficial in squeezing out that extra 4% flick performance. But there's more to a gaming monitor than just refresh rates, because if you have poor pixel response times, then all those refreshes per second won't be as beneficial as it sounds. With that said, the AW2521H has 3 levels of overdrive.